Hey everyone, Mistress of Horror here. As you know, I do these videos every Saturday. Well, let's hope something doesn't come up so I can give you a taste of horror. Now, this week's episode is all about, well, vampires. And it's going to be for a minute. This is part one, and just a little bit of general talk about vampires and what I think about vampires. Before we get started, how about you press that subscribe button, give this video a like, and ring that bell so you know when I'm uploading new videos. Now, being my alter ego self this Saturday, we're talking about vampires. Anything in horror goes on these Saturday videos. I'll turn it back to DL Tillery some other time. So, I wanted to cover 3 points. What I think about vampires and how I view vampires. Second of all, I'm going to cover one of my favorite vampire novels, kind of a half graphical novel thing, and then a few points on lore, you could say. Just general talk from myself. Now, what I think about vampires. Now, and when I write about vampires, and I do write about vampires, some may or may not like my vampires. So some people will, some people won't because they feel how they feel about vampires, whatever. But I think vampires lied about, and we're talking about in the fictional world, vampires lied about some of their afflictions. This is what I think, and this is how I write them. Now, not all my vampires, because there's so many different types of vampires, I should say, or different weaknesses, different strengths and skills and stuff like that. So, as a writer, you can write whatever you want. Obviously, there are instances where there's lore that you can follow or come up with your own thing and twists and turns and such. That being said, there will be no correct way to write a vampire as far as their, things that can hurt them or things that they can do. You can write whatever you want. It's fiction. And if someone has a problem with that, get over it. So I can give you plenty of examples of different types of vampires that I've come across over the time. I had a bit of a vampire problem, meaning I was obsessed with them. I wouldn't say obsessed. Some people may say that. I don't think so. Whatever. Um, I have a good collection of vampire novels, and I have a good collection of vampire movies, and I know a good amount about vampire lore because I was quite into it for quite some time. I'm a goth chick, so I mean, it's not shocking either. That being said, one thing that I do in some of my vampire stories is I think vampires lied about the sun affecting them. I think it was something they put out themselves, a little conspiracy going on in this vampire talk. Yes, I don't necessarily think that the sun hurts them, and I know some people are like, "What? This one of the main things that hurt them. That's preposterous. There's no way that they shouldn't be burned by the sun." And why do you think that they should be burned by the sun, might I ask? I'm just wondering. Is it because they're evil that you think that the sun would burn them? I wonder. Because if we're going to go into that, then that's going to bring up like religious things. And I hope you're very religious then if you believe that the sun would burn them. You're saying because they're cursed. Again, we're going to go into a whole religious thing. And they're really kind of hard to avoid that with vampires, a little bit, just saying. That being said, I don't think it's actually a factual thing that you have to write in. Every vampire does not need to be burned by the sun. Every vampire is not burned by the sun. And if you read a good extensive amount of vampire stories, in my study of vampires, the vampire that would be most hurt by the sun would be a Nosferatu, and still wouldn't render them to dust per se, hurt them, yes. And if you are able to render a vampire to dust, what makes you think they can't come back from said dust? I'm just saying. I know it became a popular thing when Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel came out. You probably know what those two are. Joss Whedon. But I hope I said his name right. Whatever. Now with when those two shows came around, and the comic books, they were kind of comic books and shows and blah blah blah. I mean, I watched them, of course. It was vampire based, obviously. Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel. But they started this whole trend of, well, Buffy was a movie before it was a show, but anyway. But still, the whole thing with the staking the vampire and it turning to dust. Like, can we please not do this? Can we please? But I'm getting off subject. That's part for the later part. My ramblings, I should say. But again, I don't think that vampires, the sun will destroy vampires. It's no, not happening. Whatever. Then the staking them and it killing them is just preposterous. I just cannot with that whole thing. And we already touched on that a little bit about where that all shot up from. But anyway, I digress on that. We'll talk about that later. That being said, that's one of my main things. And as the series goes on, we'll go into more of the things. But the sun, no. I think it can weaken them, yes, burn them, possibly, render them to dust. And it would be in then for extensive amount of time for that to really be a thing. And I just don't see it. It's not as if they were, direct sunlight like we get, like, oh my God, they're running them to dust. Like, yeah, no. Anyway, I'm going to say no to that. That's not, no, I don't, no. So that was my biggest one. The sun rendering them to dust. I don't believe that should be really a thing. And my vampires, that isn't really a thing for them. As far as like them, their weaknesses, I would find something else that would be more believable for us a weakness. And they're like, well, they're like a lower demon class, and then the sun would render them because the being the light and them being dark, blah 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 blah. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna go with no on that. I don't really care for that one. I think it's lame. So yeah. And I think vampires made it up. I think they did it so they can eat you during the day while you're like, oh, they're weakened and they're hiding and they can't come out in the sunlight, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, yeah, that's right. That's true. You should definitely come seek us out during the day or think that you're cool walking around. We're not going to drink your blood, kill you, whichever. So yeah, I think they made it up. A little conspiracy on my side, as far as I'm concerned. That's what I'm going with. Anyway, but yes, I believe there are some vampires. I mean, if you write it, you write it. Just that in mine, I won't be writing that because I think it's a lame weakness. I think we need something else, something better than that. Anyway, we're moving right along. Finally, after 8 minutes of that, and then we have one of my favorite books, which I have right here. This is obviously Dracula. Everyone knows who Dracula is. Duh. So Dracula. This is Bram Stoker's Dracula. This is a half graphic novel type of thing. So it has like pictures inside. So it has illustration. And illustrations by Becky Coleman. I don't know if you can see that because the picture is not zooming. But anyway, it's clear. But anyway, her name is Becky, and then the last name is spelled Cloonan. So you can look her up. I got this at Wonder Book actually, which is really awesome, on sale, and it's usually like about $18 for this book, but I got it for about like $11. It's very nice on the inside. Just a light blue paper on the first page, and then it goes into this nice clouded illustration with Dracula right there, and then this is like the landing page, and then I guess the illustrator is putting their acknowledgements in there, dedications, I should say, and then you have table of contents, and then what I want to show you is a little bit inside of the book. I think, is there a epilogue? So it goes right into this is Jonathan. It's journal Hackler. See how it has the illustration? It's really cool. I really like that. It gives you some visuals and it does that like see how it does that half page thing. I really really like that. I would love to do this with one of my books. This one is really cool because it's like made into the page, as you can see. Like, this is really cool. This is worth purchasing. You should definitely check it out. And I mean, I still love physical books. That obviously I have a big collection. Because even though I could get the digital version of things, I still like to look at it and feel it like this way. And you got the book smell. It still has it. Yeah. So this is one of my favorite ones. Obviously, the story of Dracula. Everyone knows that story. If you don't, that's odd, but you can check it out. And yeah, Bram Stoker's version of Dracula. And if you don't know, Dracula, I don't know why you wouldn't. Dracula is based off of Val Tempest the Impaler. And you can look up Val Tempest the Impaler, who was an actual man. And then they took his background and story, and pretty much Dracula was born. So, yeah, you find out about Val Tempest the Impaler, and then find out the connection between himself and the fictional character Dracula. Yeah, it's that's one of my favorite versions of this. And you can see the back. So yeah, check this version out. I like the bottom part where it says "Beware Dark Shadows" right there. It's really cool. But yeah, look up this version of Dracula, illustration by Becky Colnan. I thought it said "nun" at the beginning, but no, Colnan. Cool. So then you can see the side of it. Somewhat Dracula, and then it has like her name in between there. Bram Stoker, and then has her name after his in between, which is really cool design. I really like that. But anyway, that's one of my favorite ones, and I'll be showing you guys some of my favorite vampire novels as we go on through this series. All right, so the final thing I wanted to touch on is a few things about vampire lore. Just so you understand, there's a lot of lore of vampires, and more than likely, I mean, you can come up with your own, make some new stuff, but some things you've seen in books has been done and was already around before it was used. And just so we're clear, I'm just going to use Twilight as an example. So much hate for Twilight, and there's love for Twilight. You can like whatever you want, but let's not get on the whole argument of, oh, I don't like vampires that sparkle. Okay, first of all, the vampires weren't sparkling. You can call that to make fun of it. Whatever, make fun of what you wish. No one cares. But it was not the first time that was heard of. Maybe if you weren't into vampires, you hadn't heard it. But that diamond type skin where the sun hits it and it does a reflective surface thing and shines or sparkles, if you would like, just like any diamond would when the sun hits it. That's all to show the effect of their skin being hardened because of the half life, like half death thing that happens to them as vampires, being undead kind of setting. So that was just to show that their bodies being hard like a diamond and not being able to change. So that's what that was about. And if you read the books, you might have found that out more so than in the movies. But again, it wasn't the first time that's been heard of in Twilight. So yeah, everybody coming down hard on what sparkly vampires, blah blah blah. Like, it's fine if you only like vampires that are vicious, more Nosferatu style, that tear into their scavenger style vampires, something like that, who are all bloody and messy, maybe like the ones from what's that one called? What is that one called? I can't remember the name of the one right now. I'm trying to recall where they're in like an Alaska type of setting. Oh, 40 is it 40 nights, 40 days? Ew, what is it called? 40 nights? But now I'm going to have to check. So bear with me for 1 minute. 40 Days of Night. Thank you. Thank you, Google. So 40 Days of Night. That was a really good one. And it has an example of like a scavenger style vampire. These vampires, when they turn, it's very obvious that they are vampires and going to destroy you. So they have like, their eyes is very obvious. And then their fangs are like all their teeth. This is like smells to be piranha teeth or something going on in there. They don't just have like, oh, I have two fangs here, or the four and scissors. Like I don't have four and scissors here, like two bottom, two top. Especially like the As you can see here, Dracula testing two scissors. So like you can see there where he has his. Really, he usually has 4, and there's some vampires have 6. And then on the 40 Days of Night, they have like piranha teeth going on. Like, so every tooth in their mouth is like an incisor, so everything is a fangs, like all fangs, like piranha gonna eat you alive, like vampire piranha. So that's how, so many different types of vampires out there. Really, like if you're really into vampires, educate yourself on them. There's so many books, so many novels you can read, different styles of vampires. No, every vampire does not need to be burned by the sun or rendered to dust by the sun or rendered to dust by a stake. Oh my goodness, that one's so stupid. Like I said, it came around with the Buffy era time period, and then everyone started doing it. And then what's the other one called? With Sookie Stackhouse on it, that novel series, and in the show, like, oh, she's staking them and they're just blowing up. They're worse than turning to dust. They just stick them with a stake and they're like exploding and stuff. Like, oh my goodness, this piece of wood, bloom. Like, listen, I find that kind of stuff ridiculous. I'm sorry, I just do. Like, yes, you can come up with weaknesses. That's fine for these beings, but really, let's just stop with that. If you're going to follow some lore of vampires, if you're going to follow some, yes, you can go with the sunlight hurting them, burn them to dust if you wish. But when you start doing the staking thing and then burn them to dust, unless that's some kind of enhanced vampire hunting weapon that's been laced with such and such and has sun rays, like Blade, for instance, his weapons were vampire hunting weapons that specifically could render them to dust because of the light and stuff put into those weapons. Like, you just come up with a piece of like Buffy, she'd kick a table or a chair leg that probably isn't even real wood, probably like some cardboard or something, or some fake wood, and stake somebody and you're like, oh, I turned to dust. Like, you could even make sure this was real wood if you're gonna go that route, lame as it may be, and be like, oh, I staked this vampire with this random leg chair. It's not even pointy. Like, just so we clear, you broke a chair, it's gonna magically break into a freaking like pike. Like, stop. And I liked the Buffy the Vampire Slayer show and the Vampire and Angel show at the time when I was watching them, but let's just not be funny. If you're going to sit there and make fun of Twilight's vampires, then you might as well go ahead and just tear apart all of it. Tear apart Angel and tear apart Buffy and the lameness of the vampires going all through those and stuff. Not cool, really, vampires either. And then you're like, oh, only these sparkly vampires over here. Like, okay, I can tear Twilight apart. I can tear Buffy apart. I can tear Angel apart. I can go and tear pretty much anything apart. But seriously, don't be like, oh man, I love Buffy and his awesome vampires, blah, blah, blah. And to be over here be like, ooh, Twilight vampires sparkle. I don't like them and they eat animals, blah, 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 blah. Like, listen, those aren't much better than those. So, like what you like, but don't tear down some other thing because, you think the thing you like is better. Like, grow up a little bit or some whatever. But still, that being the case, all these things can have flaws based to the person who likes them, obviously. But I just cannot with the staking a vampire and them turning to dust. Like, whose idea was this? What's the point of this having vampires? Just going to pick up a piece of wood and stick them in the chest somewhere, chest region, and it stopped even mattering where we stuck them at. And then it was like, oh, dust, and I never come back. You've destroyed me forever. Like, let's just be humans then. Like, they're going to be this weak and able to be murdered. Like, humans can survive stuff better than that. Like, what is happening? Whatever. Okay, I think I rambled on enough for 20 minutes about this, but it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse around here about vampires. I'm just telling you now. You've been warned. So if you want to see the rest of the series, please follow it, and I will see you in part 2 of Let's Talk About Vampires. See you next week. Stay scared. You know you want to stay scared.